Rule segment number 4, supplies. Units fight better when they're supplied. Units must be able to trace a line of hexes of unlimited length through ground terrain to a supply source. The Russian supply source is basically the map edge that goes back to the Soviet Union. For the Germans or the French or the Belgians or the Dutch or the Iranians or the Saudis or the Turks, it's a supply line that goes back to any one of their cities. For Americans or British or Canadians or any other countries that are not represented on the map, like the Spanish, their ground supplies come from ports or a map edge in the case of the Spanish through France. So if you want to maintain supply, make sure that you ensure that you don't have enemy units blocking a supply line. Now, if you have an enemy unit with a zone of control affecting your supply line, you can put one of your own units and it'll cancel that enemy interference with the supply line. Now, for some regions, such as this in the Balkans, it's very important that Romania not become hostile to the Warsaw Pact, because if it were, it could then block the supplies going through Romania, and then Soviet units deployed in Bulgaria would not have any supplies. So you have to think strategically about not getting your supply lines cut. Now, supplies do affect aircraft on turn 6 and greater for the Soviet Union. It's hypothesized that after 6 weeks of fighting, the Soviet economy will collapse, and NATO starts to roll 1d6 that turn for how many aircraft will cease to function on each front, and that escalates every 2 turns and eventually comes to affect ground units as well. So the Soviet Union has basically 6 weeks to achieve their goals before a significant part of their military starts to slow down for lack of supplies. Essentially, the entire Soviet military logistics system depends on the civilian transport infrastructure of the Soviet Union, and that there simply are not enough vehicles to satisfy both functions. Now, some regions, such as Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and Poland, as well as Afghanistan and the Kurdish areas, they will inhibit supplies in non-clear hexes, unless you've got a unit and its zone of control there. In effect, it's meant to represent you've got irregular people running around, destroying the light vehicles that are the main component of sort of logistical chains. So just to be aware that your rear area is protected. For the specific rules on the Kurds, the Hungarians, Czechs, and Poles, you need to read the rules. An important element of supply is that if a unit is not in supply at the moment of combat, then its strength is rounded down by 50%. So it's worthwhile getting supplied. There are special rules regarding port-to-port supply across the large bodies of water. And finally, you're not going to be able to regroup if you have a unit that's not in supply. There are more specific rules, but as you can see, it's a generally abstracted, simple system.